Transfers are really complicated things. I know this. For no particular reason, I'm the same as you. I just kind of sit here and watch all this shit happen, right? But I would assume that there's a lot of back-end paperwork that goes on, right? Because the legal transferring of the rights to negotiate and hold a contract with one player from one team to another, it's got to be weird, right? There's a reason that you have lawyers handle all of this stuff and you pay those lawyers a lot of money because it's complex, especially when you're talking about agreements where like $250 million is sometimes in play, right? You want to make sure you keep things above board. You want to make sure that you keep things locked in. And we've had a situation. I'm trying to decide. I almost didn't record this now because I'm trying to decide whether I should be angry or not. I don't know. Maybe I should be angry, but I obviously haven't quite figured out whether I should or not, because I have a feeling if this was a different club, this wouldn't happen. But Athletic Bilbao is the club that we're focused on today. And if you're wondering why Athletic Bilbao and transfers are in the same sentence, it's because they were buying somebody that does fit into the Basque region history. They've not changed that, right? For those that don't know, Athletic Bilbao only uses players from the Basque region. The Basque region is mostly in kind of northeastern Spain, where Bilbao is, but also part of it goes into France, so players like Antoine Griezmann are eligible to play for Athletic Bilbao. Right, it's a very interesting concept. It's fun, but as a result, they're basically never involved in huge transfer drama because the only players they'd be able to go and buy are players, obviously, that are eligible. But they had locked on to one of them, Aymeric Laporte. Here's the Athletic article about, Bilbao closing in on getting Aymeric Laporte. If you're wondering where Mr. Aymeric has been the last couple of years, Saudi Arabia, getting a massive paycheck after, I believe it was 4 or 5 years at Manchester City. Before that, of course, he was at Bilbao. Man City triggered his release clause with something like $70 million. He went over to Man City. He won Premier League titles, other trophies, Champions League, headed to Saudi for a couple of years. And now at the age of 31, he wants to come home because obviously somebody that is or has been as accomplished as he has been over the course of his career at the age of 31, there is still going to be a serious level to his game, right? He's still totally going to be able to take care of business even if he spent 2 years in the wilderness. I think he was at Al Nassr. Yeah, he was at Cristiano Ronaldo's club, Al Nassr. So he's not been winning anything over there, right? Famously, Cristiano Ronaldo not been able to lead Al Nassr by the mighty Al Hilal, but, hang out, collect a paycheck, life's good. Seems like a pretty cut and dry deal, right? The first hurdle in this deal is that he has a whole year left on his contract, and Al Nassr turned down the request basically that Aymeric Laporte made to mutually exit his contract so that he could move, which I don't blame Al Nassr for, right? There are a bunch of terrible things that can be said about Saudi Arabia in general, right? Or about maybe even the impact of the Saudi League here. But one of them is not that they are holding a player hostage, right? Laporte has agreed to a contract with Al Nassr. Okay, and he's basically gone and asked to be released from it early, which he has the ability to do as a human being with legs. Even if he didn't have legs, he'd probably be able to do that. Just pick up the phone. They also have the right, because it's their contract that they mutually sign with this player, to say no, right? It's not like Al Nassr's in the business of wanting to lose matches, right? They are in the business of winning matches and sports washing. Those are the two businesses that they are locked in on. And so they're using Aymeric Laporte ideally in their world to help with both of those. But the contract's been agreed. They can say that. So Athletic Bilbao, in this kind of multi-week saga, as these things often are, very slow developing, goes back and puts some money on the table. The money ends up being about $10 million, right? And says, here, Al Nassr will give you about $10 million, and then we can have Aymeric Laporte. And Al Nassr's like, okay, right? They agree on this deal. Spanish international is 1 year left in his contract, is nearing a La Liga return. The paperwork is expected to be finalized and official in the next few hours. Then you get an article from Yahoo Sport, which, again, this is all happening kind of around September 1st, which is deadline day, right? Not the easiest day to be getting this stuff done, but it is also the deadline that forces things to happen. Spanish international Aymeric Laporte has traveled back to his home country while patiently awaiting the announcement of his return to Athletic Club. He's seen his name dominate the headlines for weeks. This comes after word was forthcoming that the aforementioned athletic club had kickstarted talks with Saudi outfit Al Nassr over a deal for the one-time defensive stalwart. But then, all of a sudden, the paperwork doesn't materialize, and Aymeric Laporte just doesn't sign for Athletic Bilbao, which causes all sorts of chaos. And fortunately, shout out to the transparency here, Bilbao actually just releases a statement on what they believed happened. Okay, these are the events. On September 1st, and within the player registration period permitted by law, player Aymeric Laporte, the Saudi Arabian of the Saudi Arabian club Al Nassr, an athletic club, agreed to the player's transfer to athletic club subject to the fulfillment of certain conditions. Athletic Club submitted the transfer request to the FIFA TMS platform on September 1st, although the transfer request could not be fully completed on that date for reasons beyond its control and due to external factors beyond its control. On September 2nd, the RFEF requested FIFA to authorize a validation exception in order to obtain the international transfer certificate from the Saudi Arabian Football Federation so that the player can be registered. And we're going to get to the result of that in a moment. It turns out, other reporting here that I've been able to find on Goal is that the situation outside of Athletic Bilbao's control is actually Al Nassr in this instance, right? There's the 10 million euro transfer cannot be registered because the Saudi Arabian Federation failed to send the necessary documents on time. Now, obviously, there are wild theories as to why this might have happened. One of my favorites, of course, and the one that might make the most sense to me, is that the deadline day in Spain, it's going to be hours and hours later in Saudi Arabia. So you're talking about people in the dead of night that are going to be trying to get this stuff in. It does stand to reason that maybe somebody was asleep, right? Maybe somebody wasn't paying attention. There is also the more nefarious, right? There is also the much more nefarious situation where maybe the Saudi club, obviously they didn't grant him a leave for free, which again is within their right and still makes sense, but that could suggest that they really didn't want Laporte to leave. He just really wanted to leave in a way to kind of quietly, without angering anybody too much, or I'm sure everybody's incredibly angry in this situation, but not having people overly angry at you is, oh, we messed up the paperwork. Right, and then Aymeric Laporte ends up staying until at least the January window, and you keep your good player on your team for 5 more months, right? Like that is honestly something that I could see a particularly savvy desk clerk or director of football trying to do, right? It makes sense. It's kind of a succession type move, but it would work. But why could I potentially be angry about this? Because as you can probably imagine, the appeal was denied. The RFEF informed the athletic club via email that FIFA denies the request and the possibility of obtaining the international transfer certificate. I think that if you end up in a situation where the transfer is attempted in good faith before the deadline, that if there is proof, right, emails and such, if there is proof that this really was just a mistake, we didn't submit this or whatever quite in time, there should be some leeway on this. And I realize this is FIFA. RFEF is the federation in Spain, right? FIFA is the one that's actually making this decision. Why could I potentially be mad? I feel like if this was a different club, that FIFA would not be standing in the way of this. I feel like this is something that is so minor that if it was a Real Madrid or a Barcelona, they would not be releasing these sort of statements where they just, we're all about transparency and this is what's happened. And if, we're exploring our legal options, if we can't find any, then nobody's on the hook for any money and we just don't have Aymeric Laporte, right? If this was Real Madrid, they would be making nuclear 2-hour-long documentary takedowns of FIFA as to why they should be able to sign this player and why FIFA's corrupt for not letting them do it. If it was Barcelona, they'd take out another $1 billion loan, which is entirely unrelated. They would just do it anyways because that's just habitually how they handle stress, is taking out some sort of massive loan of money, right? They would just do that again, right? But I hate those things, right? I hate what Real Madrid does. I hate what Barcelona does in these situations to try and press the buttons and apply pressure. But you can't deny the fact that it works. Because I'm reading this situation, and this is a huge deal. I mean, Bilbao is a Champions League level club that has a snowball's chance in hell of actually winning the league here. And adding a world-class center back would go a long way towards doing that, right? And they're being denied that on what is essentially a very small paperwork technicality. Okay, and this is a paperwork technicality that has to do with time zones and leagues in different parts of the world and different federations, right? It is the sort of thing that I feel like there would be some sort of legal recourse out of. I have no idea, right? What's the point of these videos? I'm just your friend sitting at the lunch table talking to you about whatever the hell they saw in the sports news that day. That's basically the way I approach talking about these videos. That, and of course, my ability to not run as much as possible, which I have maintained. I have not run in quite a while, so thank you for not bullying me for that. I have no idea if this would, like, how this would have played out, if there's a history of this playing out in the past. But athletic club having submitted absolutely everything, having proof of an agreement with a club, and then the paperwork just not being quite in time, but maybe coming in an hour later. Come on. There's got to be some sort of legal recourse for that. And the fact that there's not is just silly.